Welcome back, everyone, to the Hearthstone Grandmasters playoffs for Season 2. The winner of this entire bracket this weekend for Europe will be the last spot for the European region to send a representative to the global finals at BlizzCon 2019. My name is Frodan. I'm joined by Alex Barhorst, also known as A-Bar. A-Bar, a former Hearthstone Championship Tour Summer Championship appearance back in 2016, has since transitioned to be a invaluable member of the Hearthstone production team, both as a stat, an analyst, as a producer now, and a showrunner. So, A-Bar, it's wonderful to have you on the desk. You are a competitive player, always top legend. It's great. It's an honor for me and a pleasure to cast with you. So,
it is an honor to be here, Dan. You know, I spent a lot of my time trying to make Dan look smart from the other side of the camera. It rarely works.
You try your hardest.
It rarely works, but I do try my hardest.
Way to wear out your welcome immediately. But. Well done. Point taken. Actually, funny enough that we talk about the 2016 Summer Championship because shortly thereafter, we had a last call tournament in 2016, and a player that won that tournament was Pavel, a player that we weren't really sure too much about. We did know that he was an online grinder, and he had a lot of competitive history at that time. But little did we know that the legend of Pavel was just beginning, as he ended up, of course, going from there to BlizzCon 2016, proceeded to windmill slam Amnesiac in the top 8 with the Babbling Book, which is now back in Standard, and then became world champion, went on one of the hottest streaks in competitive Hearthstone to date.
And much to the chagrin of the Americas region in general, I think a lot of us were rooting for Amnesiac on that particular World Championship weekend. I do get a little bit of nostalgia looking at the lineups here. Pavel piloting the Reno Mage, one of the very few players across all 3 regions who's actually bringing the Reno Mage. And this is a deck that he piloted with great mastery when he was on his run in 2017 following up his World Championship. He was one of the best players of this archetype back in the original Reno days.
Yeah, and I think it's a direct response to all the priests that are out there. I think, Pavel, recognizing priest is still very much a threat, and even just the idea of bringing mage sometimes completely warps people's strategies, right? They feel like, oh, I have to ban this mage now, and then that leaves other things open, or perhaps they don't protect priest because they realize that they're trying to target that. And with warrior and mage, and of course his own priest deck, that might make Bunnyhoppor sweat a little bit. So instead of a first Q priest that we see so many people do, what does Bunnyhoppor do instead? Qs a shaman.
Yeah, it is in response to the priests. A lot of players claimed a handful of different matches over the course of Season 2 were favored against priest. What the stats showed us is that simply was not true most of the time. Reno Mage is one of the few decks that can back up that claim. It was actually 7-2 against priest in head-to-head games between those 2 archetypes. I also want to give a nod to the fact that I think this deck has some good game against shaman. I was playing it a lot on ladder just last night myself, actually, testing Pavel's specific build of Reno Mage. I like that he has kept this list relatively lean. He did not give in to temptation to add a card such as Ragnaros to this deck, which I think doesn't line up particularly well against the decks you're hoping to queue this Reno Mage into. So I like this build, and I expect good things from him if we do get to see this one.
Yeah, I think the Ragnaros builds are, for one, it's pretty awesome. Ragnaros making a comeback. It fits really well into mid-range or even slower decks to give them a win condition. It's an elemental, so when you play Sandbinder and other decks in Highlander versions, you can just draw it. It makes sense on paper, but when you're trying to focus a strategy in Grandmasters, when you construct a lineup, the sum is greater than the parts. And I think that overall you want that Reno Mage to be very effective at what it does best, which is just killing everything.
And speaking of focused strategies, Bunnyhoppor, for weeks, actually, even before the patch, I don't know how much of the Europe broadcast you've been able to get a hold of, but he's been protecting Shaman and banning his opponent's Shaman at any given opportunity that he has been allowed to. We see Pavel actually protecting his own Shaman this week. So this will be the first time that Bunnyhoppor actually has to go up against another Shaman in quite some time.
Yeah, Bunnyhoppor, in the closing weeks seemed to kind of finally get on that train of not get on that train, rather. A few people in Americas were finally able to get on the train that so many other people like Bunnyhoppor are doing, which is prioritizing the shaman ban, even after protecting the priest, which is fairly interesting even though a lot of people started, respecting Warrior or queuing Warrior. And it made sense given that he had Warrior in his lineup too. And Bunnyhoppor, going into this game number 1 against the Reno Mage that has things like Reno the Relicologist, we're going to see how effective that new package of the Evolve can help swing this matchup. There's not any additional tech cards that you've seen in the past. We've witnessed Plague of Murlocs making its way into things. You see sometimes Witchwood Piper, so they can go a little bit more over the top of things like Control Warriors, so they can get their combos going. This seems good old-fashioned Quest Shaman with the Desert Hare Evolve.
Yeah, the interesting thing about Bunnyhoppor's Quest Shaman isn't so much the cards he included, but the cards he took out. We see former champs were becoming a staple of the Quest Shaman. Those have been removed for some of the leaner options. The Desert Hare evolves. So the deck is just much faster to develop onto the board.
Yeah. No Giggling Inventors to crowd your hand. No former champs, which, I wasn't really that big of a fan of former champ outside of just hero powering with it. I felt like playing it on curve was just very meh, as a shaman, which is why I was pretty excited to play other cards like Witchwood instead. That being said, I still respect the Quest Shaman. It's very powerful. In your experience, I guess you said you've been playing Reno Mage. Do you feel like this matchup has changed significantly and who's favored, who's not?
I wouldn't say significantly. The Shaman deck has gotten noticeably stronger from the addition of the Desert Hare Evolve package. But the matchup, the Mage hasn't changed very much at all. And the Desert Hare Evolve package isn't really at its best against Mage. Mage, of all classes, is the deck that is most capable, most efficient at removing mid-game board states. We see the Reno the Relicologist, for example, in Pavel's hand. That is a card that this archetype is largely built around. It shines in this matchup maybe more than any other in the fact that it efficiently clears a board right at the stage of the game where Shaman wants to be developing.
Well, Pavel doesn't have to do anything too hasty right now, just pretty much responding to what Shaman does, which tends to make the Quest Shaman go combo crazy. Lifebreaker, Cobalt Lackey, Bog Slasher Hand, Evil Totem to potentially get even more of those lackeys. And I think maybe in Bunnyhoppor's mind, what's the best thing to do here? Is it try to capitalize on how slow Pavel is by going slow himself with Evil Totem and assemble his lackeys? Or perhaps even fight for tempo and get his quests finished, right? Like you can play Box Slasher this turn and try to set up quest completion, but it's only at 1 out of 6, so finishing it soon is not going to really be something easy.
Yeah, I think I would like to see the Evil Totem myself here. Obviously, quest completion is important, but this is a matchup that is going to go long. You're going to have time to complete the quest. You're going to want to get the most value you can out of those Battlecry triggers later on in the game. Mage having nothing on board, there aren't too many individual specific spot removal spells that this deck has access to. It focuses more on AoE effects. Frostbolt is the biggest exception. We do see the Ray of Frost as well. But from Bunny's perspective, a significant percentage of the time this Evil Totem does stick and continue to accrue value. So I respect this line from him. And hey, the Cobalt Lackey is helping the quest completion as well.
The payoff is pretty high, too. If Pavel wanted to develop a 4-mana minion, Bunnyhoppor gets to immediately bounce that Cobalt Lackey and double dip on it. So things like Bone Wraith, Twilight Drake, even the Arcane Keysmith in this situation just kind of makes it difficult for Pavel to get everything that he wants if he had that 4-drop, which he does. He has Bone Wraith and would ideally love to just ping off this Cobalt Lackey and be able to squeeze into tempo play.
Yeah, turn 4 is when the Reno Mage starts to make its own proactive plays, so this is nice timing from Bunnyhoppor. Typically, Reno Mage spends the first couple of turns reacting to opposing board states if they are presented. And then starting on turn 4, you run down the deck list. We have Arcane Keysmith, Bone Wraith, Twilight Drake, Witchwood Piper. They start to create their own game plan at this phase of the game, so disrupting those proactive turns is going to pay dividends here for Bunnyhoppor.
Yeah, I think dividends a really good use of that word here because it's not immediate payoff. It's something that is a small investment towards getting, small returns. And being able to finish the quest maybe half a turn earlier so you can even use it in the same turn is going to be important, or even just having that existing 1-1 on the board. In this case, Bunnyhoppor has the opportunity of capitalizing immediately off the weaponized Wasp draw, but it's not exactly clean. So this Bone Wraith, a pretty underrated card that came in through Saviors of Old Doom, having a nice impact here for Pavel.
Yeah, it's nice. And paper, it was likened when the expansion was announced, released. It was likened to a 4-mana version of everyone's favorite Sludge Belcher. I don't know that it has quite lived up to that billing, as many cards that have been compared to Sludge Belcher have not. But it has done a nice job in this meta game that involves a lot of Highlander decks, filling a critical role in the mid game to just sort of stem some bleeding. That is a lot of damage we're starting to pick up from Bunnyhoppor's side.
Yeah. I wonder if Pavel's looking at this Conjurer's Calling right now. Trying to see if he can get board presence before playing Reno, because then Reno Relic Call just gets really strong once you're able to use it to start pushing. AoE in general or tempo is very strong against Quest Shaman. Clearing the board makes it very difficult for them to climb back. That being said, Pavel favoring the Vulpera Scoundrel picks up a couple of interesting possibilities. Gets the Luna's Pocket Galaxy.
And I like that a lot from Pavel. An interesting dynamic about this matchup is that typically the Shaman has more late-game firepower, and it is the responsibility of the Mage to close the game before the quest is complete. Not before the quest is completed, but before the quest takes over the game. So the kicker there is Luna's Pocket Galaxy. It dramatically accelerates the pace with which the Reno Mage can direct the game. It can close games much more quickly when you start seeing cards like 1-mana Alexstrasza and Caligos coming off the top of the deck. And it forces the Shaman to have to play much more reactively. They can't simply grind you out with all of their removal tools and then just let Shutterwalk end the game from there.
It's true. I do like this too because Pavel, by holding on to his, by not playing Conjure Calling, first of all, it's more mana efficient, but it makes Bunnyhoppor really scared to develop into turn 6. So this is a tough situation. Bunnyhoppor, with that Mogu Flesh Shaper draw, can actually clear off most of this board, if not everything.
Yeah, this is clean. You usually don't get to see the Mogu Flesh Shaper played for this much tempo in a matchup like this without the assistance of Mutate, but we do have this Witchy Lackey, which is going to allow us to accelerate that out ahead of schedule. Let's see what we get here. There's high variance on 8 drops, and that's a pretty nice one.
Yeah, it does give Pavel, or Bunnyhoppor rather, some stuff to stick, right? Because this board will go down to a Reno, but at least some 2/2s are around.
2/2s that then spawn into 1/1s.
Right.
We're gonna have some fun.
Even 10 health left on the board for Pavel.
And I think Pavel would be okay with that notion too, given that Bunnyhoppor could have also gotten 8/8, which would have not died.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Squeezing a bunch of damage. Woo. Speaking of good 2/2s in this situation. Sandstorm Elemental. Quest is pretty much done with the next card or battle card he plays. So with up to 7 mana available to him, what's the best course for Bunnyhoppor in this spot?
So with the quest being nearly completed here, I am looking at saving this Kobold Lackey Weaponized Wasp for the follow-up turn when we can get the maximum value out of those 2 cards in tandem, which leaves you with somewhat of an awkward turn on this turn here. Sandstorm Elemental doesn't look half bad, but I definitely respect valuing the most proactive turn possible here from Bunnyhoppor. Obviously, he doesn't know that Pavel discovered a Luna's Pocket Galaxy, but it is very much a card that is on his mind. So he's going to get things cooking right away.
Makes sense. If they do commit to Luna's Pocket Galaxy, try to punish them as hard as you can for it. Shut down possibilities of Conjure's Calling. Pavel with the instant Luna's Pocket Galaxy, recognizing this is the way he comes back into the game. Bunnyhoppor has a A lot of damage coming in through the Life Drinkers, followed by the Shutterwalk. 8 damage right now, 6 through Life Drinker, so 14 with more on deck.
So attacking with these minions on the board, Bunnyhoppor can put Pavel to 18. If he hero powers and Life Drinkers, that's 6 down to 12. He can then follow that up with another hero power and a Life Drinker to put Pavel to 6. And then all of a sudden we have a Shutterwalk with multiple Life Drinkers in the pool that will deal 6.
Yeah, and I wonder if that even gives reason for Bunnyhoppor to hold on to Shutterwalk. Because he can hero power, hold on, of course he'll hold on to Shutterwalk. Hold on to the coin, so that way he can hero power coin Shutterwalk and do the forbidden double Shutterwalk battle cry.
And with 2 Life Drinkers in the pool, that would then deal 12 damage, which means that even with the Kartut Defender that we see in Pavel's hand gaining him 6 life, he would then still be in range of dying. Right. So Pavel's the one who's going to need some help here off the top of his deck. Flame Strike is solid, but we're really hoping for 1 mana expensive minions at this phase of the game, getting rewarded for that Pocket Galaxy. This will buy us some time, though.
Right. And the thing about that play we mentioned from Bunnyhoppor is that's in 3 turns, so yeah. Might not even get to that point.
We go again?
Possibly. I mean, this is also a situation where Bunnyhoppor might load the board up with just even the Desert Hares. And just present another board that Pavel still has to deal with, and then next turn use Life Drinker into the Shutterwalk.
What to do?
I guess the holding onto Desert Hare makes Evolve draw much better. So instead you can just perhaps hero power Life Drinker. Part of the reason why I think I liked the Desert Hare is just that it filled up the board a little bit more efficiently.
So it's very difficult for Reno Mage to gain life. The only 2 cards that do it are the Kartut Defender that I already mentioned, and then Ziliax. Alexstrasza actually is an exception that is, in a sense, life gain. But if we were to Life Drinker here, that means that if Pavel spends his turn developing the Defender, he does not gain any immediate life, and our Shutterwalk is lethal. So I like this line because it forces Pavel to either have an Alexstrasza or a Ziliax to not have guaranteed lethal next turn. And it looks like Pavel is out of answers without the help of a little randomness from either Conjurer's Calling or a Power of Creation here.
Yeah, Power of Creation, unlikely to save him in this spot.
I'm not sure there's any immediate lifesteal available there, so is it then all on... Yeah, I mean, Pavel can't possibly be prepared to expect the Shutterwalk next turn, so he's going to develop the Kartut Defender. Yeah, and that's just going to be game.
Yep, double Life Drinker in the pool. No possible way for it to whiff, unless Bunnyhoppor. But does he kill the 3/4 by accident with like Cobalt Lackeys?
That is possible. There's no lackeys on the board, so we can't weaponize Wasp it, but there were multiple Cobalt Lackeys played because Bunnyhoppor returned one to his hand earlier in the game, so this is not 100%.
Looks pretty close to it, though.
Yeah, it appears to be now. Yep, Bunnyhoppor is safe. That will be lethal damage. Game 1, Bunny.
Bunnyhoppor with a Quest Shaman win over the Mage, which, I was anticipating. I think Reno Mage is much more effective at crushing aggressive decks that aren't so combo heavy from with damage from the hand. So it's much better versus, say, the Priest or, perhaps even the Zoo Warlock, right, that Silvername was going to bring. But, Pavel's not playing against him. So in a very interesting way, perhaps he has drawn his worst opponent than he would have preferred otherwise for his first round.
Yeah, the Priest, the Zoo Warlock, and then the Evolved Shaman. We've seen about a 50-50 split between Evolve and Quest Shamans being brought to playoffs across all 3 regions. I think that Reno Mage lines up better against the Evolved Shaman. I personally favor that list to the Quest Shaman that we're seeing out of Bunnyhoppor. But for Reno Mage matchup specifically, I definitely would say advantage Quest Shaman, and that paid off for Bunnyhoppor right there.
Yes, so Quest Shaman gets that victory, and with his Warrior being banned, I'm curious where Bunnyhoppor is going to turn to next. N'Zoth Control Warrior, not something that we've seen very much. Even on ladder, I haven't seen much of it. In fact, it seems like most Warriors still favor the aggressive builds of some kind, playing Bloodsworn Mercenary and trying to capitalize early game pressure. So, you know, I'm curious how it kind of goes from this point. He has Priest and he has Druid available to him. And I wonder if Pavel is going to also respond by just playing as Reno Mage again, feeling like he's in a good spot.
That wouldn't surprise me. It looks like Bunnyhoppor is going Druid, if I am following this graphic correctly, which does not surprise me at all. It's rare to say that Priest is not a safe queue, but if you look at Pavel's lineup, he's committed a lot of resources, a lot of deck choices and archetype choices to shoring up his Priest matchup, perhaps expecting his opponents to protect their Shaman instead. So I am not surprised at all to see the Druid, and then like you said, Highlander Mage coming out again here for Pavel. We should note that Bunnyhoppor's Druid deck has an interesting flair to it. It includes a Baleful Banker, which allows you to generate infinite cards with Elise and Baleful Banker. If you have a Banker in your hand, then you play Elise, you copy the Banker, you banker your Elise, you draw your next Elise, and then you have a Banker in your hand. It's an infinite loop. So what do you do with that infinite loop? A, you never fatigue. B, we have Kun the Forgotten King nowadays back in these Druid decks, so you can generate 10 armor at every iteration of that loop along the way.
Yep, and of course a 7/7.
Yeah, that doesn't hurt.
While developing other things too. I've actually, when I was playtesting in Sotto with that deck, I was creating like a Elise loop while having Starfall in the hand. So I just kept clearing and developing 7/7 and doing other things. It's a very interesting late game fatigue scenario. I think that gives you a lot of inevitability over Warrior. I have not seen it apply to almost any other matchup. Mage could be one of those matchups because it goes deeper into the game. However, I feel like if you give them that time, perhaps you don't have enough ways to respond with your mana compared to a Lucas Pocket Galaxy deck that is able to generate crazy boards out of nowhere, and I don't care how good 10 armor free 7/7 is. It's not answering, you know, a Antonitis, Alex Calicos tempo turn.
Sottle actually reached out to Casey specifically, who is one of the innovators of this Baleful Banker version along with Bunnyhoppor, and Casey said that the infinite loop is almost entirely reserved for Warrior matchups, and in basically any other matchup, you do still look for opportunities to just tempo out the Kun where it is appropriate.
Yeah, it does make sense. Very similar to how Arcus Elysiana isn't really often in the Warrior decks for anything except, well, other Warriors. So it makes sense that players have these one cards to try and help them. But yes, as we digress, going to game number 2, Bunnyhoppor with very okay, mediocre hand so far. Pavel's the one that I feel like I'm going to be focusing on here because, well, one, he's down 0-1 in the series, so he needs to win this game. Otherwise, his playoffs are over. People who get seeded 4th into the playoff bracket are in the losers or the lower bracket immediately, versus Bunnyhoppor gets 2 tries compared to Pavel. The second thing is that I feel like Reno Mage largely is the mover of this matchup. Even though Druid's the one presenting the threat, it's like it often depends on whether or not Reno Mage actually has a way to win. Otherwise, Druid has just like this inevitability in the late game. So I'm looking to see if whether or not Pavel can find a way to get ahead of the Druid early and maybe even leverage that with things like Conjur's Calling.
And Druid is relatively redundant in what it does. In contrast, the Reno Mage, by the very nature of being a Highlander archetype, its proactive game plans tend to be more piecemeal. You have to sort of come up with a strategy based on the cards that you draw. So you're presented with interesting decisions like Pavel is right here. You can see him very genuinely, I believe, roping out this turn 2, undecided on whether or not he tempos Zephyrus, and he does decide to go for it now as opposed to using it for a later resource.
And does he even pick Wild Growth versus Animal Companion? I think that's another debate that you can actually have, because Animal Companion is a reasonably stat minion that you can punish. Your opponent's not on the coin, so they're not going to finish the quest before turn 5 to get those Oasis Surgers. Maybe you get a lot of extra damage in. You know, those kinds of things really do factor into each other. And with this ramp in particular from Pavel, what is he even necessarily curving into, right? Like, usually you saw the Wild Growth go into the 5-mana Olympus Pocket Galaxy. But there's no actual direct application of this Wild Growth here. So it's definitely foresight here from Pavel in some capacity. He really wants to utilize this Wild Growth for something in the future turns.
In the days of yore, accelerating out a tempo Antonitis would have been very powerful in Druid, or against Druid rather. The tools that Druid has access to now with a 7 damage Starfall alongside Oasis Surgers make that a little bit less viable. So I don't think that it's necessarily taking Wild Growth here to assist the cards that are currently in hand, but rather the ones that he expects to have off the top of the deck. Luna's Pocket Galaxy, again, would be a huge pickup here in this type of slower tempo matchup.
Yeah. Bunnyhoppor somewhat rewarded with the attack into that Zephyrus. It was a little painful, but now he can Wrath for 1 and draw a card. Maintain his quest progress while slowing down the damage. Wild Growth can't really lead into too many 5-mana plays. The only 5-mana minions in the deck of Pavel are Barista Lynchin and Ziliax. So I guess killing off the 3-1 would stop a Barista from getting another Zephyrus in hand.
Curious if Bunnyhoppor is even interested in cycling this Wrath at all. You can see him very heavily debating it himself. I think the primary motive behind this is that Bunnyhoppor is still lacking the critical card, Nourish, for this archetype. He would like to be accelerating his own game plan faster than he is currently able to do. And alongside 2 Oasis Surgers in hand currently, he feels like he can play the tempo game well enough without needing 4 damage Wrath a couple turns from now. He has the luxury of cycling it. So this is an interesting spot here for Bunnyhoppor. Swipe obviously makes clearing this Drake much more convenient next turn. He doesn't have a great way to spend his mana otherwise. It could possibly get punished by exactly the Conjurer's Calling that we do see in Pavel's hand, as that effectively causes him to waste the swipe entirely as he turns this Drake into a set of different 4-drops. But from Bunny's perspective, I would respect just dealing 4 damage to the Drake right now.
What to do?
Good call, A-Bar. And the swipe, Pavel is ready to punish with the Conjurer's Calling, assuming that he wants to go for that. He thinks something else better for the top, perhaps. Instead, he'll opt for it. I can't really imagine too many more things. Oh.
Well, so the downside of the Conjurer's Calling play is that putting 2 4-drops on the board this turn, on average, creates incredibly convenient value trades for an Oasis Surger next turn. Whereas the Tiamat that just appeared off the top of the deck, if you give this Divine Shield and Wind Fury, neither Oasis Surger nor Starfall conveniently gets the Tiamat off the board next turn, which means it's very likely that this is connecting for 12 damage, and that's where Pavel wants to be right now.
Yeah, he's the one putting on the pressure. Plus, Conjurer's Calling is way better on average on 7-mana minions than they are on 4-mana minions. So you're getting that that tempo. That Wild Growth has paid off. And that early investment from Pavel really showing off why it was a good move. Now, Bunnyhoppor, what is his response to this? He does have the ability to put things in the way. So, for example, he could Starfall, knock the Divine Shield off, and then play Anubis Defender. Another Starfall, which might make parting ways with the first one a lot easier. He does have 2 hidden Oasis, so taking a little bit of damage isn't the worst thing in the world. It's about taking too much damage, I think it's on his mind.
Damage isn't the worst thing in the world. The problem is that you have to expect Pavel is going to be able to follow up this board state with additional ones.
It's true.
Even though Arena Mage tends to be slow out of the gate, turns 7, turns 8, it really starts to be able to secure the board state with large threatening minions. I like the Starfall here on the Drake, popping the Divine Shield off of the Tiamat, and it at least mitigates some of the damage here that the Tiamat will do by developing this Defender. But you're not unhappy to see this as Pavel.
Oh my.
Whew.
Well, we're first going to start things off with what looks like to be the Conjurer's Calling here for Pavel. I guess Volperos Conjure first.
Is it the Conjurer's Calling? I'm not convinced.
You'd rather go for an Arcane Keysmith?
I am definitely tempted by the Arcane Keysmith. There could be a couple reasons that pays off. Okay, he is going to go Conjurer's Calling. The reasons that... Oh, wow. I don't feel like he got better end of those 2 random 7 drops here. This is a window of opportunity for Bunny, but I like the Keysmith because it can do one of 2 things. It can either develop a splitting image, which Bunnyhoppor wants to be attacking into that Tiamat next turn anyway, so that's pretty good value off of the Keysmith here. Additionally, it could find something like Counterspell, so if Bunnyhopper's backup plan to clearing that Tiamat was something like a Wrath or the second Starfall, all of a sudden that strategy is negated. This play plays onto the board quite well. Additionally, is a perfectly reasonable option from Pavel. I just think that the Keysmith in general is a less valuable resource than the Conjurer's Calling in this matchup.
Sure. It just so happened that this outcome lined up really well against both of Bunnyhoppor's options, right? Like, because like you said, if he ended up going for the Arcane Keysmith and he got that splitting image or Counterspell, Bunnyhoppor had answers to both. But against a Rabble Bouncer that appeared out of nowhere, not nearly as prepared. Pretty funny how that works. Now I'm wondering, how far does Pavel go down this line of continue to push minions versus just trying to end the game? He has Frostbolt and Reno Jackson available to him to help answer the board or even just go for damage. He even has Archmage Antonides in his back pocket to help get that damage.
I think I like starting with the Conjurer's Calling here on the Azalina and then reevaluating our board position from there, which I believe is what Pavel is leaning towards himself. It's a risky gambit going for damage. Ooh, that's nice. Okay, these are better 7 drops.
Yeah.
But yeah, I like this from Pavel. I like using our damage-based resources to clear up the board state. If you start to push base damage against Quest Druid, then it exposes you to the cards like the Hidden Oasis actually getting max value in the matchup.
Well, it looks like it's going to get max value one way or another right now. Bunnyhoppor does have the Innervate, so next turn can utilize Innervate along with other things like Kun, but Kun only restores, I believe, 9 mana next turn because it says refresh your mana crystals. It's not gain 10 mana.
Yes, that is key to those of you planning out your next couple of turns at home. A play that is not available to Bunnyhoppor is next turn Innervating Kun with the Starfall and the Oasis Surge on the same turn. It will reset you to 9 mana crystals.
So if he does play Hidden Oasis, he's opening himself up to just an easy trade on the board with hero power.
Time waits for no one.
But he does have 2 Hidden Oasis, and they're harder to use. Plus, he, like you said, gets full value. Not something you can always say in a matchup like this. Emperor Thaurissan making its way into the hand. Pavel can have some really powerful combos later in the game if he's able to discount a bunch of cheap stuff.
We're gonna have some fun.
Generally speaking, Emperor Thaurissan works better with cheaper cards than more expensive because it's a higher percentage of the mana that you're discounting from the card. 2 mana to 1 is a, well, 50% discount or half off versus 10 to 9. Not really that impactful by itself.
Right. No mind control text here from Bunnyhoppor's side in this Druid list, so Pavel is free to tempo out this Luna as he so pleases without any risk of it backfiring. Yeah, I do like this particular line from Pavel. When you can get value out of your cards in the form of tempo, when you can translate tempo into damage, that to me is more appealing than something like an Emperor Thaurissan, which is effectively a card that invests in your later game states. Right now, I don't see any reason for Pavel to pull the foot off the gas.
Yeah, and that might evoke Bunnyhoppor into making a defensive play here. Using his Innervates to clear everything up. Like it. It's necessary. I don't think it's a great spot for Bunnyhoppor, though, to say the least. He's committing almost everything to try and remove this. Pavel has an easy opportunity to drop Emperor in this spot, to drop Caligos. Any big threat that he wants.
This is
Splitting Image, Frost Nova Vaporize. Okay. Well, with 2 Oasis Surgers being used, makes Splitting Image an interesting choice because I don't know how many times they can attack into it. But there is a 5/1 that's left, right?
There is a 5-1 left, but what is that 5-1 going to do that you're unhappy about? If it punches face, sure, fine, you have some life total to work with here. If it's part of Bunnyhoppor's plan to clear off this Kaligos, then your splitting image just got value to the max, right? The Starfalls are out of the way, and so you can't reduce the health total on this Kaligos preemptively.
Yeah, and it's also scary because of the mirror entity.
Yes.
See, that's no mirror entity.
So you raise the eyebrow from Bunny. He was very clearly concerned about the possibility of mirror entity there.
Right. Oasis Surger. So with no counterspell triggering, with no mirror entity, knows it's either something attacking face related, like Flame Ward, Ice Barrier, Vaporize. But the most likely scenario, based off the clues, is that it is a splitting image.
The decision to discover first here was actually interesting to me. He could have punched face to cross off a couple more options as to what the secret might be.
Well, I was thinking that he was going to hit an Oasis 5-1. Maybe try to make it better versus whatever kind of AoE that would come out. Bunnyhoppor hasn't tested for Spellbender, though, so healing himself is more guaranteed and safe.
0 mana clearing off a 7/7 seems appealing.
Yeah, especially with the fact that Antonidas can get 2 fireballs in this position.
That would then leave us with 3 mana. Pinging off a 5/1 seems rather convenient.
There's still a splitting image too. So Archmage Antonidas is very hard to contest.
I like the polymorph. I think that I would use this 3 mana. I would forego the Arcane Intellect. Yeah, just clear this 5/1 off the board again. Maximum tempo at every given opportunity.
With these Oasis Surge of Forbidden's Flute, that's 20 damage for Bunnyhoppor to spread, and with a splitting image threat.
Bunnyhoppor seems to know it too. You can see the frustration on his face. He throws his hands up. He knows what's coming. He doesn't want to have to play into it, but he can't find any alternatives.
Yeah, I think you gotta kill that Antonidas, but because of that secret, which again our overlay doesn't have it immediately showing, but there is a splitting image which summons a copy of whatever you attack. In this case, attacking the Antonidas would have the least amount of health to chew through, but I would take a lot of resources, and he can't clear everything. If he summoned another Kaligos, that's probably biting off more than he could chew, given that there's 2 12 health minions that you want to kill and Antonidas.
Time waits for no one.
Yeah, there isn't a way to fully clear the board here from Bunnyhoppor's perspective. I'm running through all the different iterations of which minions he could attack.
Behold,
And so he is going to... Oh, interesting. He does duplicate the Kaligos.
Okay. I guess it keeps more health on the Oasis Surger this way.
Hangs in the balance.
2 Kaligos has the same effect as 1 Kaligos, just that there's an extra 412 there.
It has the same effect, but now you still have to clear both of them before this effect goes away. And Pavel's going to be able to generate a lot of tempo off the free resources.
Yeah, I mean, Bunnyhoppor did pick up the Wardrobe Lodi.
Unity, precision, perfection.
Good fights all around. Bunnyhoppor still has 1 natural Starfall in the deck. Baleful Banker. Ooh, the tech card not paying off here. That is a card that he specifically put in for a different matchup, and now it's kind of a punish.
Yeah, not the time or the place for the Baleful Banker. The Power of Creation is an excellent pickup here for Pavel because with his Antonidas gone, the pure damage line is somewhat out the window, and so he is attempting to win this game purely through fighting for board state here. And his hand was starting to run a little thin in terms of efficient stats. Power of Creation just showed that out nicely.
Yeah, I wonder if there is merit for Bunnyhoppor to shuffle in anything with Baleful Banker. It is tempo. It is something that he could potentially use if he gets another Wardrobe Lodi. Power of Creation. Our 2 defenders. Just a lot of stats to get in the way of stuff. Bunnyhoppor has a lot of dead draw too. If he picks up King Feoris, it'll do absolutely nothing. He gets another Innervate in the deck.
Yeah, that's sort of my question with the idea of using the Baleful Banker here is what card does Bunnyhoppor want to draw to try and get out of this position? My mind goes to Zephyrus. Cenarius, not a bad one as well. So I think at this phase of the game, you would actually be diluting your average draw step to put one of these other minions back into your deck that don't really help you fully take the board state back.
It's true. Maybe Cenarius comes in, doesn't die, which doesn't look like it will right off the bat. And if it doesn't die, then you have an opportunity to Baleful Banker that and then capitalize, right? Like, let's say you draw Nourish next turn. Cenarius doesn't die. You Baleful Banker, Cenarius back in. There's still a ray of hope for Bunnyhoppor in this spot.
Yeah, there absolutely is. He's gotten a lot of value, Pavel has, off of this Kaligos and the cost reduction on the spells, but frankly, Pavel is running out of spells to cost reduce. So at some point, that is just going to become a vanilla pile of stats over there, and if you give the Druid an inch to take back tempo, it will take a mile. It has incredibly efficient resources once it gets to this state of the game. See Pavel, he's starting to get a little concerned about that himself.
Yeah, perhaps that's why the Death Rattle on the Cartridge Defender is very nice to help him pick it apart. Tortellum Pilgrim. There's a lot of good spells still left. AoE, Flame Strike.
That's the one.
I mean, there weren't that many spells left like you're talking about. And Pavel with the slow Vice Grip closing in on Bunnyhoppor right now. Bunnyhoppor still has a little bit of time, but not much. I mean, it helps.
Yeah, I'm debating if you take max attack power off the board here or max stats. You could target either the Kaligos or the Tortollan. There aren't many ways that leaving the Kaligos on the board an extra turn backfires on you. Pocket Galaxy is about the only other one. Flame Strike being 0 mana this following turn doesn't matter. Bunnyhoppor does want to mitigate the threat of Pavel getting any more tempo out of this Kaligos. He's willing to excuse the 1 additional point of power left on the board.
Need a key?
Counter spell to stop a top deck Nourish.
Well,
And
counter spell to stop a Twisting Nether off of Zephyrus critically.
yeah, that's also a good point too. If Zephyrus would even be active. Nourish on the top.
Oh.
It's about to get the bad news. And that should do it. I don't think
15-16.
Bunnyhoppor has any chance to win anymore. Pavel doesn't have lethal.
Pavel's one off lethal, even if Zephyrus were to find Twisting Nether here, would leave Cartoon Defender still on the board. Hero Power, obviously, as well, is just lethal on its own. I believe there are no outs from this position. That certainly ain't it.
Concede.
Back-to-back whiffs here for Bunnyhoppor. The Nourish not being able to activate, and the Reno Mage able to grind his opponent out of resources. Drew doesn't really often flounder like that, but every now and then when it does, it makes it feel like, should I be putting more things into the deck? I don't think so. I feel like even if he had like the Chef Nomi and the other big powerhouse stuff, I think it would have been a similar spot.
Yeah, and the Reno Mage did its job. I think that's critical in understanding how the Shield Phase Conquest format works. Going 1-1 from one of your decks that isn't one of your top 2 decks is critical because you protect your best deck in the matchup that you expect to get a win. You get your second best deck banned, and then the key phase that decides which of the 2 lineups is successful is which player can get a win off of deck 3 or 4. So Reno Mage going 1-1, that's an accomplishment here. Pavel expects to be able to secure a win with his Shaman. That could very well be up next.
Because he protected his Shaman to start things off and banned the Warrior. Pavel does not have access to Priest. So the 2 decks available to Pavel are his Warrior and his Evolved Shaman, his Token Shaman, Aggro Shaman, Overlord Shaman, whatever you want to call it. With, you know, a lot more token approach than I think other decks are. He has like Microtech Controller, the Stormbringer, which isn't always exactly uniform across the board. So yeah, let's see if Pavel's Shaman was timed and positioned perfectly. Maybe it's even better in the mirror because of that Stormbringer, which is probably why he feels like he has that edge.
Yeah, I do like Pavel going with the Shaman here for a combination of the raw power level of this archetype, along with the fact that his warrior deck is very lean. It's not like the KC and the Bunnyhoppor warrior decks with the N'Zoth Youthful Brewmaster package that can fight for board late in the game. It is very much an anti-aggro version of Control Warrior, which doesn't leave him the liberty of queuing it and risking going into Bunny's Druid again. So the Token Shaman makes perfect sense to me. And as you mentioned, Microtech Controller is not a card that you see often in these Token Shaman lists. I mean, I say see often. It's been around for 3 days, of course. But a lot of the Grandmasters have settled on a different Token Shaman list that is credited to Muzzy. That does not involve that card, but it makes a lot of sense to me. I'm not convinced it's optimized, but I respect it.
Yeah, I think it just comes down to a pivotal turn, which is to be proactive for turn 3. I feel like that is one thing I struggle with this deck, which is to do something nice. I even entertained the idea of playing Unbound Elemental when I was first playing a different variant, just because I wanted something proactive and, like, you know, your opponent's very clearly trying to save removal of Thunderhead. So if you just present something on 3 that makes them panic a little bit, might get them to sweat. Plus, there is additional payoff, right? The Stormbringer, which helps you get more legendaries onto the board. You have additional minions for Vicina to be able to activate her Bloodlust. So I think the theory makes sense, but you know the question is that it's taking away a slot of another crucial card. I think that's usually what people debate, whether or not Microtech Controller is the best possible solution. No one argues if it's good or not.
And the slot it's taking that you see a lot of other players going for is Spirit of the Frog, and those 2 cards are night and day useful in different matchups. Like you said, Pavel is max tempo with his choice, Spirit of the Frog. You intend to play the game a little bit later and accrue resources off of it. Yep. But on the other side of things, we do see Bunnyhoppor's Druid here again. As we mentioned, the Baleful Banker has potential for an infinite loop with Elise, but that isn't what this matchup is about. I expect it to be a liability yet again here in Game 3.
Well, we're going to see how effective Microtech Controller potentially could be against Druid if Pavel chooses to keep it. Does not. Interesting. Against a matchup that is relatively slow in the upkeep, or sorry, the upstart, right? Like the idea that Druid doesn't take a long, it doesn't get on the board quickly usually. He chooses even to throw it away, being on the play, which is giving him something to be more proactive about. I find that extremely curious actually from Pavel's side. I think when he has evolved in the hand and he's keeping it, he's looking for one thing, which is Desert Hare.
Yeah, there's some power spikes in this Shaman deck that you mulligan for. It's reasonable to have a Microtech Controller in your opening hand in this matchup. You don't mind that. But Pavel is mulliganing a little more aggressively here. Obviously, Desert Hare in tandem with this Evolve is the nuts, but there are also some other options here. He has 2 Underbelly Anglers in his deck. Druid doesn't have a lot of efficient ways to remove that, just Wrath basically, and even then if they pass a turn to Wrath instead of progressing quests, that's kind of a win.
Picks up Desert Hare turn 1 here. This is Game 3 on the line. The loser of this, their playoffs get cut short, and the dream of making the global finals is over. 2 players looking to make their second appearance at a world championship. Pavel, the 2016 champion, took his championship and decided to go on a rampage. In the background, you can see a Game Goon trophy on the bottom right. He was taking his BlizzCon victory and snowballed that into stringing together consecutive tournament victories right after, and then put on a blistering 80% plus win rate over the next 6 months. Meanwhile, Bunnyhoppor trying to follow up last year's fantastic performance into another World Championship berth.
And frankly, he has followed up with a fantastic performance through 2 seasons of Grandmasters, even though he hasn't secured the World Championship berth. Yeah. His consistency over the course of the last 2 seasons have spoken for itself. Other players within the Grandmasters system have lauded him as one of the players who's been playing the best over those 18 weeks of gameplay. So.
If you look at Masters Tour as well, Bunnyhoppor has been the most consistent over the past 2, I believe, both going, I think, 8-4 or better. I think 8-4, 9-3 over the 12 rounds. And he didn't make a top 8 cutoff because, to be quite frank, the tournaments require a very hot streak, to say the least, to be able to even make top 8 from a field of hundreds with only 1 cutoff. But Bunnyhoppor has done fantastic as a Grandmaster. I think no one doubts his skill whatsoever. Double Desert Hare. I mean, if anything, Bunnyhoppor hero powering Desert Hare just it's just a drop in the bucket here. He is in for a world of hurt.
So it is painful, but I would like to see Bunnyhoppor innervate out a swipe this turn and forego a tick on his quest completion. When you see Tempo Desert Hare on 3, that is a signal I have learned in my few days of practicing this matchup that actually often it means that Desert Hare is also coming down on 4 alongside the Evolve, and that is the reason that the Shaman player was willing to risk developing a Tempo Desert Hare to begin with. So Bunnyhoppor might gamble and just pretend that those cards aren't there. I would respect that. This is a tough matchup from the Druid side. You have to pick your poison somewhere. But for me personally, I take this as a signal from what I've learned. If I innervate the swipe, Bunny declines.
He probably wants to do it next turn.
Yeah.
And bank on his quest to pull him out. And I think maybe it's because he's too stranded for turns 4 and 5. But with this second Desert Hare and Evolve. Okay. Not the best 4-mana minions, to be honest.
This is winnable.
Conjured Mirage is going to disappear after this turn. It is kind of annoying that all these are 4/3s, but if he swipes, he has a potential innervate. He can innervate to finish out his quest, and he also has the potential for Starfall to bail him out on the following turn. I think the big thing on Bunnyhoppor's mind is, am I dead to a Bloodlust? To which I would say, yes, you are very much dead to a Bloodlust.
Yeah, you don't have the liberty to worry about that question until you get much later into the state of the game, right? If you try and play around Bloodlust every single turn in this matchup, it's just too much. You have to try and use your resources efficiently in the early game, and then when you can afford to later on, maybe we start considering Bloodlust implications. But yes, don't waste your mental energy and your time on your clock doing the math. You are dead to Bloodlust. Just assume that's true.
Well, if he Mortuary Lodi's in taunt mode as a 1/6, I believe he actually is alive through Bloodlust. And I think the theory would be similar to Swipe in that Mortuary Lodi would absorb a couple of attacks and soften things up for Starfall to potentially sweep the board.
Alright, live to die another day, Bunnyhoppor says. Conjured Mirage will live up to his name here. So there's no way you can shrink your own board state and start to get value off your Thunderhead this turn.
No, it seems like Pavel will have to make do with what's currently on board, which is sort of Bunnyhoppor's gamble, hoping that he can get Starfall off the top.
Which makes my head go to, from Pavel's perspective, how do I keep as many of these minions as possible with 3 health at 3 health so that Starfall is the least amount of risk that I can make it. Okay, alternatively, interesting, maximum tempo. Okay, so he's saying, I'm going to make Starfall bad because I have enough stats on board that it won't matter.
And also trying to stop Oasis Surger from being efficient. Or the Expedition. Where the Expedition into Starfall is pretty much exactly what Bunnyhoppor needs in this stage. Otherwise, playoffs is over. Druid of the Scythe, Kuhn, and Ancient of War. Oof. Kuhn being in the pool, not helpful right now.
So
are we at the bargaining stage, A-Bar?
3, 6, 9, 12, 14. If he swipes, he is not dead to just the board state here, which sets him up for Hidden Oasising next turn. Boy, he just has to rely on Pavel's hand to be so dead for him to claw his way back.
He does have Anubis-Thought Defender as a potential way to help gain extra life, but Pavel feels so close to the finish line and staying alive in this tournament. 14 damage, as you mentioned. 15 through the Goblin Lackey.
Okay, so I was wondering if he starts with the Sludge Slurper here.
I kind of wonder if he's even contemplating perhaps a Healing Totem chance to see if he can make Starfall even like a possible non-out. I kind of like toteming in this spot.
And Pavel agrees.
Does not get it. Bunnyhoppor needs Starfall. The Nubisat defender, something. Gets
Hey.
Starfall off the top.
We have a game. That is nearly a full clear. Pavel would be left with just a 2-3.
He's so close to the finish line, though. Goblin Lackey, 2 Goblin Lackeys in hand.
Yeah, a 2-3 quickly turns into a 4-3 if Pavel chooses, which would mean that he would only need 1 damage to close out Bunnyhoppor on the following turn.
1 more Goblin Lackey, 1 more Kobold Lackey.
Even Ethereal, there's so many possibilities to find 1 damage. I think I'm personally going to call the Ethereal Lackey into Frost Shock right here for the exact damage.
Sure.
I wonder.
While I'm up here, you know, I feel like that happens a lot.
Yeah, you know what? The totem's not going to survive. I want the Totemic Surge
Ooh.
lethal. But the Evil Totem's biting the dust as well as the Wrath of Air Totem.
Time waits for no one.
07 good totems. But you know, one thing that I actually started taking out of my decks was Underbelly Angler, because I always felt like it was just being stranded. You just need specifically the other Angler or the Sludge Slurper, and I always felt like I never had them connect.
Yeah.
In this scenario, though, it is beyond bonkers. No lethal, at least not yet. I don't think Nightmare Amalgam actually could get lethal at this point. Murloc Tasty Fin, which allows him to draw another set of Murlocs.
Leroy? Not Leroy. Okay. Life.
Wait.
Oh! I was so close, Dan. Oh no.
Pavel
be it for
takes
Bunny.
the series 2-1, advances to play Hunter Race. 2 world champions will meet in the lower bracket in order to get a spot in the semifinals and keep the dream for the global finals alive. Bunnyhoppor had a wonderful year, even earlier this year, right? In the World Championship, making it to the top 8. It looks like his run throughout Grandmasters for 2019 has concluded.
And I queued it up earlier with Soddle. I was very curious about the fact that 75% of the field across all 3 regions brought Druid this weekend. Druid has a bad matchup against Priest. We've thoroughly established that. Priest has a 74% win rate against Druid across all of Grandmasters Season 2. I think that with the addition of the Hair plus Evolve package and Shaman, that thoroughly swings the matchup over to Shaman. Was Druid necessary as one of your 4 decks this weekend? Because it really cost Bunnyhoppor there, dropping both games.
Right, and it didn't even beat, Mage, another wild card matchup. It probably struggles against Zoo like it always does. Druid could be a heal, and I gotta say that I really like the way Pavel's constructed this lineup to try and get an edge over even other Shamans.
Yes.
So I think Pavel could be one of these hidden players, the dark horses that people aren't expecting to do well. They're looking at Hunter Ace, they're looking at Bunnyhoppor, they're looking at Yarla's really amazing season. But Pavel could be, based off the way the lineups are lining up here, the player that we're looking at joining us at BlizzCon.
I mean, how about Pavel's redemption arc to go along with Silver Names? This isn't crazy. The Russian player's bouncing back.
Yeah, and so that 4th match, the final of Europe today, will determine who goes to the semifinal. Hunter Ace, 2019 champion, Pavel, 2016 champion. There can only be one. Who will it be? The answer is right after this.